Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Jaya, Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Prajagavacharya Astutora Satta Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Thank you. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Prajagavacharya Astutora Satta Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Iskcon Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasti Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki. Ganga Maya Ki. Jamuna Maya Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Tulsi Devi Ki, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki, Nita Gaur Pramanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to Sambuddhi Buddies. All glories to Sambuddhi Buddies. All glories to the Sambuddhi Buddies. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Gaura Premanande Haribo. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. Itai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Nirottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshva Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to the Srimad Bhagavatam class. Please first of all give me your blessings so that I can say something meaningful and useful to the devotees here. Speak according to the message as it's coming down to us through Srila Prabhupada and the rest of the Parampara. So, thank you. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 12. It's called Beyond Renunciation and Knowledge. and we'll be reading from text 20. It's a little shift away from the normal Krishna house schedule. We were just hearing about Bali Maharaj last week and the appearance of Vamana Dev. But now in the temple curriculum, we're at the 11th canto, and right now Krishna is instructing his dear devotee Uddhava. Just before Krishna winds up his earthly pastimes and actually returns back to the spiritual world, so Uddhava is in great anxiety because he knows Krishna is about to leave. So he approached him and began asking him for guidance. He's like, what should I do? Please don't leave us. And Krishna said that, unfortunately, you have to stay because I have a task for you. But before he leaves, he instructs him in actually every aspect of knowledge, like karma yoga, jnana yoga, and ultimately leading up to the highest example of bhakti yoga. And we just heard in the purport, maybe yesterday or the day before, that the particular mission he had for him was that Krishna, while he was on earth, he wasn't able to actually go to see all his devotees that he wanted to give blessings to and give instruction to. So particularly the sages at Badarik Ashram, he didn't actually make it there. So he's instructing Uddhava in this transcendental knowledge, this understanding of the highest goal of bhakti yoga, so that Uddhava can then go and then give them that message. So right now we just got to a point where Uddhava, just like Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, was kind of bewildered because Krishna is going through, he gives all these instructions like do this thing and do this. They're seemingly contradictory because like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna that you should just fight and be unattached to the results, like do your duty, act. But then he also simultaneously teaches about like renunciation in knowledge. So Arjuna's like, so what do you want me to do? Do you want me to actually fight, or do you want me to go and renounce and seek knowledge, meditation? So similarly, that's what's going on here. Krishna just instructed Uddhava in many different processes, and Uddhava was confused, like, how am I to apply all these things? Which one should I do? And Srila Prabhupada mentions that actually Krishna, his intention was not just to instruct Uddhava with his lessons. He was actually speaking these teachings for all the living entities of all time. Because actually, Krishna's path is complete. It actually can accommodate anyone, no matter where they are at in their level of realization. So that's what makes it such a universal path. It can actually accommodate each living entity. It's just a non-sectarian process that's fit for every living entity, regardless of nationality, faith. All these different things are all temporary. So we're leaving off here. This is a response that Krishna gives. He's actually goes back to something called Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya means to, well, as Srinivasacharya Prabhu was mentioning yesterday, I guess I don't need to go into too much detail, but Sankhya means to count, and it's about like analytical understanding of the material universe and all its different elements, a breakdown of everything. And the goal ultimately of this Sankhya philosophy as given by Krishna, and also more specifically by Kapila Dev in the 3rd canto, when he appeared and instructed his mother in this science, the goal of it is ultimately to understand the soul as distinct from the body, and also understand the Supreme Soul, the Paramatma, and eventually, ultimately surrender to Krishna, develop our love for him through understanding all the ways in which he's actually manifesting his potency through the material world. So I think this is the last verse in this string of instruction. So we'll chant the verse, and then we'll get into the text and the purport. Please repeat after me. Ayam hi jivas trivridabhya yonir avyakta eko vayasasa adyaha vishlishta shaktir bahudeva bhati bijani yonim pratipadya yadvat. Ayam hi jivas trivridabhya yonir avyakta eko vayasasa adyaha vishlishta shaktir bahudeva bhati bijani yonim pratipadya yadvat. Please chant. Ayam hi jivas trivridabhya yonir avyakta eko vayasasa adyaha vishlishta shaktir bahudeva bhati bijani yonim pratipadya yadvat. Ayam, this, he, certainly, jivaha, the supreme living entity who gives life to others, trivrit, containing the three modes of material nature, abja, of the universal lotus flower, yonihi, the source, avyaktaha, unmanifest, materially, ekaha, alone, vayasa, in course of time, saha, he, adyaha, eternal, vishlishta, divided, Shaktihi, potencies, Bahuda, in many divisions, Eva, like, Bhati, he appears, Bijani, seeds, Yonim, in an agricultural field, Patipadya, falling, Yadvat, just like. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When many seeds are placed in an agricultural field, innumerable manifestations of trees, bushes, vegetables, and so on will arise from a single source, the soil. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who gives life to all and is eternal, originally exists beyond the scope of the cosmic manifestation. In the course of time, however, the Lord, who is the resting place of the three modes of nature and the source of the universal lotus flower, in which the cosmic manifestation takes place, divides his material potencies, and thus appears to be manifest in innumerable forms, although he is one. Purport. Srila Viraragavacharya comments that one may question as to whom the cosmic manifestation, consisting of demigods, men, animals, plants, planets, space, etc., actually belongs. Lord Krishna now eradicates any doubt about the source of the cosmic manifestation. The word Shrivrit indicates that the three modes of nature are not independent, but are under superior control. The suffix vrit means the vartanam, or existence, of the three modes of material nature within the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Analyzing the term abjayoni, ap indicates water, and ja indicates birth. Thus abja means the complex material universe, which sprouts from Garbhodaka Shayi Vishnu, who lies in the Garbhodaka ocean. Yoni, or source, indicates the personality of Godhead, and thus Abja Yoni means that the Lord is the source of all cosmic manifestations. Indeed, all creation takes place within the Lord. Since the three modes of material nature are under the superior control of the Lord, material objects helplessly undergo creation and annihilation within the universal shell by the will of the Lord. The term avyakta indicates the Lord's subtle spiritual form, which exists alone before the material creation. The Lord's original form, being spiritual, does not undergo birth, transformation, or death. It is eternal. In the course of time, the Lord's material potencies are divided and manifest as bodies, bodily paraphernalia, sense objects, bodily expansions, false ego, and false proprietorship. Thus the Lord expands his conscious living potency called Jiva Shakti, which is manifest in innumerable material forms, such as those of men, demigods, animals, and so on. From the example of the seeds sown in an agricultural field, we can understand that innumerable manifestations may arise from a single source. Similarly, although the Lord is one, he becomes manifest in innumerable forms through the expansion of his different potencies. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna. So yeah, this is some pretty technical stuff. Does anybody have any questions or reflections at this point before we discuss some of it? Yes?
I like how it clears up that the Abja Yoni, like that he's the source of everything, because I feel like outsider looking in, a lot of people think this is like, oh, there's so many demigods, it's like it's a polytheistic religion, but that's not the case. Like Krishna is the source of everything. So for me, I was wishy-washy before, like a couple years ago. Like I wasn't sure if this religion is there how many gods there are. I'm like, oh, do they worship different gods? I'm like, but it's nice to see it being cleared up.
Yeah, that's a good point. And he expands on that too here, because he's talking about how he expands his conscious living potency called Jiva Shakti, which is manifest in innumerable material forms such as those of men, demigods, animals, and so on. And there's a verse in, I don't know exactly which spot it's in, but it says, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Yo, what is it? It's in the Upanishads. Eko Bahuran Yo Vididhati Kaman. And basically it's saying that there's one supreme eternal from whom all the other eternals are coming from and being maintained. So basically Krishna is the only one capable of fulfilling the desires of all the other eternal living entities that come from him. So in that way he is supreme. And as we're hearing here, all the different forms of all the living entities, both moving, non-moving things, all these things actually come from Krishna. He's the original source of all creation. This is here we're hearing about the pastime of the Lord when he creates the material universe, and it's talking about Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. But prior to that is the first Purusha expansion is Karnadakashaya Vishnu or Mahavishnu. And he actually, through his breathing process, when he has an exhalation, all the different seeds of the universes, they're described as coming out of his pores. And then when he, through his glance, he actually impregnates each and every one of those universes with all the conscious living entities, as well as different potencies, one main of which is kala, or time. So with that potency, everything becomes kind of activated from being in a dormant state to being active. And then also with the introduction of the living entities, they're given a particular body form that is perfectly in line with the karma that they had previously. Because each time there's an annihilation, all the living entities who are still in the material universe, they're kind of like wound back up into the body of Mahavishnu. And then when he creates again and the universes come back out, all the karma of each living entity, it kind of reactivates again from that dormant state. So we're given a form according to exactly of our state of consciousness was. And really it's just for the purpose of the creation anyway. The Lord actually creates this material universe for actually multiple purposes. One is to give us the experience of actually trying to enjoy separately from him. But then also he builds in the ultimate goal of a chance to rectify our consciousness, to get back to the point where we want to return back to the spiritual world and resume our original position. I was reflecting when reading this verse that, so we have the creation by the Lord first, and then when in each of those universes he expands again into Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, as it's talking about here, and he lays down, and through his perspiration actually, that creates the Garbhodak ocean, and that fills half of each universal egg. And then he kind of lies on Shesha, his servant, basically the 1,000-headed Ananta serpent. He lies on him on that Garbhodak ocean. And then he expands again into Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, who then is the Paramatma, who's kind of in every living being, every atom, every heart. And he's the one who's kind of reciprocating and driving the material world to continue on, because he's fulfilling the desires of the living entities. And as he also says in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, from him come knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness. So without the Lord's inspiration from within, it's like we can't even really do anything for ourselves. But the reason why we can't see this is what I wanted to get into, because Lord Brahma, when he's born from this lotus flower that comes out of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, his purpose is to kind of establish the different planetary systems and create the different forms for the living entities to take so that they can enjoy and fulfill their desires. So he's in charge of what's called the visarga, or kind of the secondary creation. So once he's born, and he does penance for quite a long time, and then eventually he gets the blessings of the Lord, and his particular service is to carry out this creation. So he's empowered, inspired from within. And I was reading yesterday that actually the first creation he does after kind of creating the planetary systems is he creates these 5 coverings of ignorance. They're called Tamisra, Andatamisra, Tamas, Moha, and Mahamoha. And it's interesting that these are actually these are necessary coverings that have to be placed over us in order for us to have that experience of being God or being separate from the Lord. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to try to enjoy this creation. So Tamisra is described as being like both anger or like envy, this feeling of like, basically the mentality is, that was what Prabhupada was describing, the purport, is that I am the enjoyer, I am the center, I want to be the Lord. And then that kind of leads to this Andatamisra, which is actually like a fearfulness of death, like thinking death is the end. So then you have this mentality of like, okay, I want to enjoy, and then, oh no, death is coming, so I have limited time, so I have to fulfill my desires, I have to take advantage of the opportunity. And then this tamas is a further covering that makes one identify as being the body, and all the things in relationship with the body are mine. So we're impelled by that fear of death and this desire to enjoy, and then we identify with, this is my body, and where the body comes with particular senses, and then the senses that you have according to the body, they're tied to particular sense objects. So naturally, if you're identified in this way, you'll be chasing after that particular set of sense objects to fulfill your desires and give you enjoyment. And then that also expands into like different attachments, so like family, friends, society, love. So that's moha. We get kind of illusioned by being situated in this whatever situation we have as like, okay, this is my family, these are my friends, my society, my job, I do. All these conceptions come in our head and condition us further. And then he says, maha moha is like great illusion. So then on like a whole worldwide scale, there's whole nations who are like striving to seek greater and greater sense gratification, and that becomes the pursuit of the world. But then you have competing interests, so different groups want to fight other groups for a limited set of resources, and then you see wars and violence and bloodshed, all because people are under this perpetuating illusion. So this is the first creation of Brahma, and because it's such an unpleasant service for him, that it's described that when he creates these coverings out of his shadow, and then it says out of disgust he casts off this shadow, and then it's immediately like seized by these yakshas and rakshasas who are created from Lord Brahma. And these creatures are kind of like mode of ignorance creatures that are very violent and associated with darkness. Rakshasas are actually described as like man-eaters. And then what's even more indicative of this material world is that after they seize that shadow, that creation that he made, they then look toward Lord Brahma, and they have this desire to eat him, attack him, the one who actually created them. And they quote, it says, "Spare him not, eat him up." And he's like, wait, what's going on here? So Lord Brahma's job is kind of fraught with a lot of distress and anxiety, and he doesn't really know what's going on himself. Like I said, he's completely dependent on the Lord's inspiration and empowerment. But then when things don't go according to his plan, he's a little like, I don't know what to do here. So then anyway, there's these different coverings. And because there's these different coverings, people become, they're bewildered. And that's why the difference is between like a conditioned soul and a liberated soul. In the previous chapter, I believe Krishna was talking about the difference between liberated and conditioned living entities. And it really kind of just has to do with one's desires, one's state of consciousness. So right now in a conditioned state, the living entity, his desire is actually flowing towards the material energy with this desire to enjoy. And it's fueled by, well, let me ask, in the third chapter, what does Arjuna asks Krishna, he says, what is this thing that impels people to sinful activities as if driven by force? Does anyone have the answer? Lust, yeah. And he says it's the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. It's born of kama esha, krodha esha, rajaguna samudbhava. It's born from the mode of passion. And then later it turns into wrath when it's unfulfilled. So this lust is what's driving the conditioned living entities to to satisfy the desires that they have. But yeah, it burns like fire, he says too. So that's why we see it comes with this feeling of anger, this intense anger to try to satisfy the desires that we have. And it's a selfish expression of our original love. In the spiritual world, everyone is a lover of Krishna, so naturally we have this desire to bring pleasure to the Lord. And that's the difference between lust and love. One drives us toward selfish action, and the other drives us toward selfless action. What was I going to say? In the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in the 28th verse, this is just after, so in the 27th verse, Krishna talks about how, what's that, how's that go? Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. So, bewildered by false ego, the living entity thinks himself the doer of activities which are actually carried out by material nature. So just like Lord Brahma, we're not actually in control, but because of this illusion, we think ourselves this body, these senses, this mind. Shishi Radha Nilamadava ki jai, Shishi Radha Giridhari ki jai, Shishi Giriraj Maharaj ki jai, Shishi Nitai Chaitanya Chandra Nitai Gaura Chandra ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So yeah, we identify and we think ourselves the doer of all these actions that are actually really being carried out by material nature. But then by actually cultivating knowledge, as Krishna is talking about here, this Sankhya philosophy, in the next verse it says that one who is in knowledge, he doesn't act for sense gratification because he knows the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. So with the purpose of this Sankhya philosophy is it can actually allow us to see the distinction between these types of actions. Those that are binding, those that are liberating. It's kind of like complete. So devotional service in a conditioned state is actually, it's contrary to the inclination of a conditioned soul. The only way we can actually come out of this situation is by receiving the blessings of devotees. We have to actually come in contact somehow and take the association. Also, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that he instructs Arjuna, he tells him to approach a spiritual master, just inquire from him, submissively render service to him, because by serving a self-realized soul, he can bestow that realization on you, and you can see the truth. So that's the main aspect of our process, is to just hear about the Lord, hear about His pastimes, but through the medium of a spiritual master, or of somebody who has realization of that truth. Sorry, I'm getting lost. Yeah, so just it's an amazing process that by just hearing about the Lord's pastimes in whatever way, and particularly through the lips of somebody who is a devotee of the Lord, who has love for Him, then also that bhakti can awaken within our heart. Because as we were talking about previously, we're all parts and parcels of the Lord. We are His Jiva Shakti, expansion. So naturally our original position is to be rendering loving service to Krishna. So it's not something that's foreign to us, it just needs to be rekindled. And that love is actually rekindled through that spiritual association. And I also wanted to mention about this pastime we're hearing about the Lord, His creation. Some people might not really understand why we have to hear so much about all these details and what's the importance of the Lord creating the material universe if it's temporary anyway. We should just go and listen to His pastimes in the spiritual world. But one of the things that I remember hearing Prabhupada state is that this particular Leela of the Lord, the material creation, it's actually it's the subject matter of conditioned souls. Because why? Because we're trapped within the material world right now. And as I was saying, by hearing about the pastimes of the Lord, one can get attracted and can understand the difference between the Lord's activities and those of an ordinary person. And also he even says in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also that by understanding the transcendental nature of my activities and appearance, one no longer has to take birth here in the material world and come back to the spiritual world. Naturally, when one gets attracted to the Lord, then all the things in this material world, they begin to become less appealing. Because there's such a limit to the amount of pleasure we can actually experience through these bodies, through these senses. Actually, whatever pleasure we are experiencing is only coming from the Lord anyway. Another verse in the Upanishads, I believe, Prabhupada quotes it, but he says, Rasovai Saha. He says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the reservoir of pleasure, or is rasa. So any taste that we're experiencing, even in material objects, that pleasure that we can get is only coming because that's one of the potencies of the Lord. But He's not personally manifest in those material objects, so whatever pleasure we can get is very, very paltry and temporary. So it will never satisfy us. And that's the reason why our investment in those things, it just leads to more anxiety, more distress. We can never be satisfied. We'll be continually seeking that next thing. But when we can finally get an attraction to Krishna, then our goal becomes one. We can focus on just fully developing our love for Krishna through the hearing process, through serving in various ways. It's funny, actually, it's the process of devotional service, the goal is one, but it's so variegated in the amount of ways that we can serve the Lord, because there is unlimited variety still in the spiritual world, but it's centered around a central focus. Whereas in the material world, there's so much variety, but it's bewildering and confusing, because we can't actually see what is the ultimate goal. Yeah, and in yesterday's purport, I was also struck by the point that said the exclusive feature of the material world is that it gives us the ability to be the Lord. So that's something you actually have to give up in order to go back to the spiritual world. That's the one thing this place offers, is that we have the ability to see ourselves as supreme. But what a terrible situation it affords, as just looking at even Lord Brahma's situation, the supreme living entity in the material world with so much power, and just by carrying out his duties of like creation, making all the living entities, he's getting attacked by them, undergoing so much distress. So yeah, it's a rough place, the material world. I was reflecting, I've been reflecting lately because we got new cloth in Govardhan, and I like these colors just because it makes me feel like it reminds me of like a prisoner, like a prison inmate. And it gives me a constant reminder of like my situation here in the material world. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, wait a second. I'm a criminal. I need to actually like stop trying to enjoy this world and serve Krishna. But yeah, it's nice though to have that reminder, not in a bad sense, because we need to constantly be remembering the situation here, because if we don't have a good understanding that this isn't a place that I want to be, then the material energy is so strong that we'll just get fooled again into trying to enjoy something that's temporary, and then we'll just get frustrated again. But yeah, that frustration, I guess, is the Lord's mercy. It impels us to strive for this. But then also, we need to have knowledge, so that's why the devotees go out and they distribute this transcendental knowledge, and they take up so much anxiety, go through so many risks just to get these books out to the living entities who are just in a mad dash after pointless sense gratification. Yeah. Anyway, I guess this time is a good time, especially because we're going into the Prabhupada marathon. So this is the time of year when the devotees would, of course any time of the year we should, but particularly the December marathon, devotees would go out and increase their amount of book distribution, especially during the holidays. It's a time of gratitude for really appreciating what we have, the gifts we're given. And as devotees, we don't really have problems. The only things that give us trouble, it's like because to the extent that we're still identified with the mind and body, but we have the knowledge that helps us transcend these miseries. Others don't. So yeah, we can reflect and out of gratitude just make a step to increase our book distribution, our outreach, whatever we can do to help give this knowledge to other living entities would be a great service. We're going to be packing some gift bags this week. If anybody's able to help, we'll packing Bhagavad Gita's prasadam, and then anyone who wants to come out with us too. Especially Saturday will be a really good day. We're doing the monthly Sankirtan festival at the zoo, and they have this Zoo Lights program in the evening, so there should be lots of people coming out who desperately need the Bhagavad Gita, who don't realize it, but we'll give it to them anyway. Anyway, I want to leave some time if anybody has any questions or reflections. None? Okay. Nandasuna?
I always appreciate remembering those 5 coverings. And that section of the Bhagavatam is like super enlightening about our condition, because it's when you read that verse and purport in the third canto. I think maybe it's somewhere else, but it's like kind of like you feel like, wow. You feel how those things are applying to you, anger and like illusion, and then like a deeper level of illusion, entanglement. I forget what they all are, but anyway, good to hear about that again.
Yeah.
The material world is kind of scary. Just a quick thing. The material world is scary because it's a total illusion. It's an illusory existence, and it looks real. Like the material energy is telling us that you're the man, and you should enjoy, and you should do whatever you want, and it's fine, it's okay, it's cool. But then that leads to a lot of sadness and misery. So it's like bewildering, like, well, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, but then it leads to the opposite result. So anyway, that illusion is so strong.
Yeah. Marlon?
Yeah, I mean, just elaborating on that too. I mean, how Brahma, he got attacked by his things that he created. I mean, I feel like everyone has to. It is in a sense. I'm grateful for, like, it's kind of like you have to go through trials in a sense. Like, I'm grateful for having, like, yes, this is a trap, but it's also like, it's the process is like, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like, like going through it, like people go through different things and have different shocks. Like, especially for me, like I had a big shock had to happen in my life for me to like go, I'm like, okay, like what's wrong? Like something's obviously, like there has to be more than this. Like it's just the same loop, same cycle over and over again. I'm like, I don't want this for myself. I want better for myself. And yeah, just wanting better for yourself and having that effort is, and just Krishna will provide. Like, I mean, you'll find a way, or like people find just will gravitate towards this. And at least for me, like I've seen that, and by doing so, you also just help the people around you. Like, because the best it's the best thing to help others is to lead by example, and seeing someone change is just so uplifting and motivating for others as well. And in that sense, like you can also, like I was speaking to Parth earlier about like the ninth offense, like we shouldn't talk about the holy name about someone who is faithless. And I didn't understand that at first. I'm like, well, wouldn't you want to talk about someone who's like that? But he explained it really well. Like it kind of just, if someone who isn't interested, it's more so like, I see him like, I'm Catholic, so it's more so like they're very aggressive, and in a way it's like very off-putting. So I don't want the holy name to be like, if I'm trying to push it out, to be off, like to have people look at it as off-putting or like very very, it's something that's encouraged. It's not something that you want to push upon others. And I didn't understand that for the longest time, and it's just very like reassuring. And it just like, from like, I'm in the right place and with the right people, and just
Jai. Anybody else has a comment or reflection?
Thank you for the nice class, Gaura Hari Prabhu. I was thinking about why we should know how Krishna created this material world. One of the reasons is, if we don't know how great Krishna is, by reading all these things, there is every chance of misunderstanding some of the activities that he might have performed, and also developing this sahajiya mentality. People will think, Krishna is ordinary, and I can also be like Krishna, I can imitate him. So many people do that, and they dance with other people's wives and things like that. So it's important what Bhagavatam speaks about again and again. It gives how Krishna created this world and how these elements interact with each other and all that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and the point also is that it's not like it's the Lord's pastime, so it's not something lesser. And when one actually begins to develop a taste for hearing about the Lord, His pastime of creation is so attractive. It's so amazing. And and the example also is given of the gopis who they wanted to hear all of Krishna's pastimes. They just didn't want to hear about the pastimes they were involved with, but a pure devotee, he loves to hear anything in relation to the Lord. It's just a source of bliss for him. Yeah. Anything else?
I was really blown away when you described moha, meaning identifying with relatives, spouse, so on. Because it's something that I had realized in my own thinking, that I used to always think like that. I'm this person's boyfriend, or this person's friend, or the guy that does this thing. But I realized that attaching myself to that, it limits my ability to be myself. Actually, I'm stuck to that false role. So sometimes, we may think I'm the person that loves cookies. Therefore, there's a cookie, I must eat it because that's who I am. That's what I do. So we think that these things are bolstering our consciousness, or they're reinforcing our identity. They're support systems. It's something to hold on to. It's a way to navigate through the world. But it actually gets in the way of our honest expression, or being ourselves.
Yeah, what does Prabhupada say? We're after designations. We're just trying to find something to identify ourselves. To say I am this, I am this. But we have to actually clear those false designations and actually realize our true identity. Then we'll be happy. If there's nothing else I wanted to, because I liked, the purport today was amazing, but the last few sentences of the purport from yesterday, I really think drive home the point, or the necessity of this transcendental knowledge. It says here that one who can understand the expansion of the Lord within subtle and gross material manifestations gives up his desire to live in this world. In the spiritual world, everything is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. The exclusive feature of the material world is that here the living entity dreams that he is Lord. A sane person, giving up this hallucination, finds no attractive features in the kingdom of Maya, and therefore returns home, back to Godhead. So I thought it was very powerful, that it's if we actually cultivate this understanding, if we really realize this knowledge, then we'll actually see that there's nothing enjoyable here. And actually, the spiritual world is Satchit Ananda. It's eternality, full of knowledge, full bliss. Everything there is a source of pleasure. Whereas here, it's everything's, Prabhupada describes everything as what? Temporary, full of misery, full of ignorance. So it's just it's a hollow place. And when we have the contrast of that superior thing, Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava ki jai, Shri Shri Giriraj Maharaj ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Giridhari ki jai, Shri Nitai Chaitanya Chandra Nitai Gaura Chandra ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. But yeah, when we have the contrast of that superior thing, then we'll no longer have to just settle for just this paltry, useless stuff here in the material world, and we'll actually have a hope for something greater. We'll have a true hope and a true goal that we can set our sights on. And then especially in the association of all the devotees, we can make progress together. Hari Bol. All right, I'll stop here. Thank you all for your kind attention. You had something? Maybe you can ask after? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.